Hello and welcome to Taming 3 Common Data-Centric Workloads. Today's webinar is sponsored by Pure Storage and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this discussion panel-centered event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss some of your questions in detail. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, and slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we will provide further technical assistance. Next, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we are offering several resources, and I'd especially like to call your attention to a link to get started with Pure Storage. Also in there, you'll find a link to the Gorilla Guide Book Club, where you can get access to Actual Tech Media's great printed resources on technology topics, as well as a link to the ATM Event Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Finally, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for that prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in your handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Brian Farrar, who's Senior Solutions Manager with Pure Storage, and he's going to kind of be emceeing the event. Then we have Nihal Marashi, who's Principal Product Marketing Manager at Pure Storage, and Kevin Teskey, an Account Manager at Pure Storage. So Brian, great to have you here. Take it away.
I really appreciate the intro, and thank you to Kevin and Nihal for joining us today. This is Brian Farrar, jokingly say the voice of FlashStack. But today's webinar, we're actually going to talk about something that I hope is pretty central to most of our audience's day-to-day concerns, and that is taming three very common, very intensive data center workloads or data-centric workloads. And so a couple of preliminary comments before we start. And the first thing is that the whole theme behind all these workloads is data. And data is the lifeblood of your business. It is also, I like to say, the most dynamic of your business assets. Of all your IT, data is the thing that needs to be the most elastic. Data is the thing that's going to grow the most. And that's a direct result of running these enterprise class workloads. The data always continues to grow, which means that your storage layer, even in a full stack like FlashStack, needs to be scalable on demand, needs to be agile, and needs to provide full observability. And these are themes you're going to hear come through today's webinar as we talk about each of the large, very mission critical workloads today. And that's where my colleagues are going to come in. We're going to talk about SAP, which is perhaps the most ubiquitous enterprise workload in the world. Then we're going to switch gears and take an industry lean and talk a little bit about patient care, a very large patient care application in the healthcare industry. And then finally, we're going to talk about the emerging open databases, specifically the leader of the pack, MySQL. And again, each of these, we're going to see the same sorts of themes that FlashStack helps defeat some of the biggest challenges in these workloads. So first, we're going to go to SAP and my colleague Nihal Marashi. But before we do, we have a polling question just to kind of get the juices flowing this morning. So let me read it to you. With these statements about SAP true, 99 of the world's largest companies run SAP. 77% of the world's business transaction revenue touches an SAP system. More than 60,000 customers use SAP Business One, and that is their small, medium business suite, and 80% of SAP's customers are small to medium enterprises, or all of the above. and give you a couple of seconds to weigh in there, see what people think. Looks like we've got a fair amount of action there. There were a lot of votes for 77% of the world's transactions. That's so specific. And that 99 of the largest 100 companies are on SAP. Actually, all of this is true. And the reason I put it up there is because most of us tend to think of SAP really in solely the enterprise space, solely the domain of the big business. The reality is SAP's 80% of their customers are small to medium, and they are everywhere. And because of the ubiquitous nature of SAP, it creates a number of challenges. And so I'm going to invite Nihal to join us here, and we're going to talk about some of those challenges with SAP, how FlashDeck helps in that environment. We're going to start with perhaps the most important topic in the SAP world, this journey to S/4HANA. Now, Nihal, I played with SAP a number of years ago. As you know, I was involved in SAP as well. And they kept talking about this HANA mandate. Now, I've been away from SAP for a couple of years, and you're still talking about the HANA mandate. What exactly is that around SAP HANA and S/4HANA?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Interesting survey results, but are not surprising, right? Most companies have SAP solutions in one form or the other. Now, regarding the SAP HANA mandate, SAP has laid down a strict mandate to have customers migrated over to S/4HANA by 2027. And what results from analysts suggest is that only 15 to 30% of SAP customers have fully moved over to S/4HANA. What that really means is there's hundreds of thousands of customers that are still in the early process of moving over to S/4HANA or have not even begun the journey. And 4 years might seem a long ways off, but typically moving to S/4HANA is actually a multi-year project, right? Because it's not just moving your database to and starting to use the HANA database. It's actually looking at your entire ECC environment, looking at the business processes, trying to analyze those business processes, and essentially restructure the business processes. And what that really also means is you're going to be most likely moving over your master data. You're going to be moving over your transactional data. You're going to have to kind of build and test the extensions because let's face it, every company has some form of customization, right? Which is important to their environment. So you got to build and test those extensions, test the customization, and then you need to make sure that you're deploying and stabilizing the environment. So really, it's a multi-year project. Now, while all of this is going on, your business still needs to be running, right? So the analogy I use here is essentially you're trying to change an engine on a plane mid-flight while all of this is happening. And Brian, I think an important question that always comes up is, what role does infrastructure play in here, right?
You took the words out of my mouth, Nihal, because when you talk about that kind of migration and change, and you talk about running your business on a platform like SAP, you have to consider infrastructure.
Absolutely.
What's the latest? I used to hear huge numbers thrown out there about the cost of a second or a minute of downtime in an SAP world. And it's millions of dollars because that's your business you're running. Your SAP goes down, your business ops go down.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And
explain the role of infrastructure there then. Thank you. Sorry.
That's a very, very good point, Brian. And when we look at this journey of migration to S/4HANA, we shouldn't look at infrastructure as just a checkpoint item on the project, because the infrastructure has a role to play, and in some ways there are some table stake features or aspects, right? When it comes to performance, you talked about a second of downtime or a second of delay can have a huge impact. So you need really top-end performance, and your database is only as good as your storage, because even though HANA is an in-memory database, if your storage slows down, it's going to slow down your database. So you need the storage layer the infrastructure, data infrastructure layer to be able to provide those, fast SAP HANA restart times, synchronous database writes and reads should be quick. And also importantly, HANA has some data tiering features, right? They call it native storage extension, where you have the ability to store less frequently accessed data onto your storage systems, right? And so essentially, it's a table stake feature which you need in order to be able to kind of reduce the total cost of ownership. Now, the theme of what we're talking about today is around data, right? And so you want to be able to have that freedom in your SAP environment to move data where it's needed. A classic example is when you have your development test teams, you want to be able to provide them with the fresh copy of your production data so that when they're working on product development or they're working on any kind of testing, they are working off the right set of data, and that obviously will help with time to market and making shortening the development time. And then there's other movement of data.
You mentioned a couple of things there that really kind of tweaked my imagination, Nihal, and one is how HANA, which is already a compressed database, how you're taking data in and out of HANA, moving it. And I know the more you can compress a database, the better the performance is. And
Absolutely.
I think FlashStack has a role in doing some of that, even in a HANA environment. And if you could talk to that, and then also when you talk about moving data back and forth, and you think about the volume of data associated with a typical SAP environment, how do we effectively do that and manage that? Is there an easy way?
Yeah, and that's there's going to be on the second point, I think, especially around our snapshotting technology, which I'll get to in a minute, that enables that data movement. And you're right, there is the native compression that's available with HANA, but even on top of that, you want to be able to kind of have the right kind of data reduction features that can let you kind of enable and get the space savings. With all the things that are happening in the world, high inflation, high energy costs, you want to be able to have not only reduce your data center footprint, but also be able to meet some of your green data center goals, right? So all of that is super critical, and it comes back to what are the things that you can do with their data. And then the last piece that I wanted to mention here, Brian, was around the kind of the hybrid cloud environment. Almost every organization is kind of moving into this hybrid environment, right? Or has adopted a hybrid. Very few companies are all in cloud or just on-prem. And so there's a bunch of things, right? We were talking about data, and you want to be able to have the same set of data services in terms of APIs or allowing that freedom to be available to you in cloud or on-prem, and being able to have that movement. And then the last piece is, of course, around the kind of having that single pane of glass or the visibility across, whether you have on-prem workloads or in the cloud. Super critical in a SAP environment to have that. And I know, Brian, with FlashStack and the great things that we're doing with our partner Cisco around App Dynamics, we have that capability of giving.
We get, and this is we get nothing from an App Dynamics sale here at Pure except customer satisfaction. And I got to say, if you're not looking at App Dynamics and you're running an SAP environment, you're probably doing yourself a disservice, because I think for 9 years in a row, App Dynamics has been the #1 Gartner Magic Quadrant position application performance management tool in the industry, and it cut its teeth around SAP. And to this day, they're the only ones that can manage SAP down to the app layer, and it is integrated with FlashStack, and it's a great way to get that single pane of glass visibility. You talk about data movement, and I think if I can move us along here, I wanted you to talk a little about the power of snapshots, because when you're dealing with that much data, and few applications create more data than SAP, backup, recovery, data movement is critical. So, wow, we want to talk about the partnership as well, but let me jump ahead to the snapshots, and then since we're here, and we'll come back to the partnership if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. And we're faced with unprecedented data growth, right? I think everybody who's attending this webinar can attest to the fact that they're experiencing these large volumes of data in their environment, exponential growth. And so that brings up a number of challenges for any organization. How do you operationalize the data, and how do you get value out of that data in terms of information? And then you have other issues around data silo, and you have other data sprawl, right? And so this is something that Pure recognizes, and we can address it really well with our snapshotting technology. Essentially, what our snapshots are essentially point-in-time, immutable images of the contents of your data volume. So there is actually no kind of performance degradation because we can take these snapshots instantly. You get complete copies of it, all the capabilities, whether it's kind of mounting, read, write, or any kind of performance, great performance. And we've touched upon space savings, right, in the past with the data reduction features. But there's also space savings in terms of these snapshots, because there's zero data duplication with these snapshots. And the last thing is around kind of recovering any volume from any snapshot. So Brian, I think I've talked a little bit about snapshots, but a common question that comes up is, okay, that's great, Pure, but how do I use it, or what are the use cases? So I think if we move to the next slide, I wanted to spend a few minutes and talk about what the common use cases are for snapshots. So I'll give you two examples. The first example is what you see on this slide here around the dev test refresh process, right? It's when what we hear from our customers is that they use this in their dev test environment, and it's an unbelievably quick way to kind of get data into your test environment without having to take down your production environment, right? I talked about the need to help your developers improve their development time and cycles and work off fresh copies of production data. So snapshots is a perfect example of how they're doing that. Again, there's zero performance overhead. A lot of our customers are actually automating it, right? Automating the entire snapshot process end to end. We provide APIs and we integrate with those automation frameworks to make it easy. So that's one example. Another example is, let's say your test environment is down due to some bad piece of code, and we've all been there, right? Where one custom ABAP process can take your business process down for a day, or if not a day, at least for a few hours, right? And so this is a classic example where our customers who have been taking snapshots along the way can quickly recover or get their test environment up and running by just going back to the latest snapshot. And so rather than try to fix the code or try to wait 2 days to try to get the code before getting their environment up, this is a way to get up and running and be able to keep moving forward. So again, this is something that we do really well with FlashStack.
So this kind of ties back to your first comment about changing the engine out on the plane while you're in midair. That's really what you're describing here. Is your SAP system can never come down. You can't afford any disruption, but you've still got to support the DevOps people and the engineers developing new features, rolling out new tools, and they can't do that without a perfect image of the current SAP operational data.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I also mentioned, Brian, is we have this deep partnership with SAP, right? We've been partners with SAP for a long time, so we really understand SAP environments. We've been global partners with SAP. We've actually got co-innovation and development that's happening with SAP at the Waldorf headquarters. And then we've partnered with SAP in a lot of thought leadership events as well. Where I was at SAP Insider just a few weeks back. Great energy at the show. We've also been at Sapphire, ASUG, SAP TechEd. I think a lot of the customers that I talk to are talking about this S4 journey and data. The whole what do you do with the data, and how do you make sure that you're able to deal with the challenges of the growing volumes of data. Those are kind of the topics that keep coming up recurringly in all of my conversations.
But yeah, and I never would have thought a storage vendor could make a material difference when you're talking about something like an SAP, but that's the whole theme of today's webinar, is the material difference we can make. And I know with SAP, there has been a lot of joint innovation just around the storage. You mentioned native storage extension. I know we worked closely with SAP to test that, and that's a very important feature. Running a HANA database is, all right, I'm not giving away any trade secrets. It's not cheap. It's expensive. It requires specialized IT. But when you can reduce the cost of that, maintaining that data by moving some into a warm data tier like you were describing, goodness gracious, that's material savings right in our customers' pockets.
Absolutely, 100%.
Let's talk about, I mentioned a customer. Let me push you ahead, and I apologize for my operational errors here on slide clicking, but I'd like to push you ahead and talk a little bit about one of our recent customer wins at Southwest Gas, because the reason they chose FlashStack is a lot of the things that you've described here today for their SAP environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Southwest Gas, a great customer of ours. They actually provide service to over 2 million customers in Nevada, Arizona, and I think it's Utah. They were in a situation where they had antiquated storage systems. The performance of the applications was really slow, and the bottleneck obviously was their storage. And Southwest Gas is in the business of providing a very critical service, right? Failure is not an option. You cannot afford any kind of disruption to the more than 2 million customers, right? So they were having a system that can eliminate a bottleneck like that was super critical to them. And then on top of it, they were also moving to green data center goals, and the system that they had in place, the legacy system, was really not meeting their requirements. They've moved to FlashStack, not just for the SAP environment, but also for some of the other environments like Oracle. And they're seeing really great results from that. Data reductions of 4 to 1.
Is that a typo? That's got to be a typo on your slide, Nihal.
No, not a typo at all. That's something that our customers have the customer has actually confirmed. And by the way, Brian, that's on top of what you had previously talked about, which is the HANA compression.
It's already a compressed database.
Exactly.
When I first joined Pure, I had an argument with my boss. I said, that's not possible. You're BSing me. And I'm all for pushing the envelope on marketing, but we can't lie. Nobody can compress HANA like that. And it turns out this isn't us with a marketing point. This is reported back to us in real time from our software.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing statistic. And it directly relates to money savings, obviously.
Absolutely, Brian. And I think what we've heard from this customer is also the fact that they've been able to speed up customer service, right? At the end of the day, it's about them being able to make their customers happy, being able to kind of cut costs and be able to meet all of the other requirements, right? So really, really great savings. And I encourage everyone to visit the Pure website and take a look at more details on the case study that we've published with Southwest Gas.
Well, thank you very much, Nihal. I appreciate the discussion about SAP. As I said, maybe, it is the most used business app in the world. And to think that we can provide with FlashStack these kind of advantages and cost savings is really encouraging. But we have a theme here, and we're going to move ahead a little bit, and we're going to talk about patient care. And we talked about non-disruption with an SAP environment, and another stat we talk about is 6 nines of availability, which, coming from a server world, which I came from before I joined Pure, I would never have thought that was possible. But indeed, 6 nines of availability is reported back to us from our software, and that's critical in a mission critical environment like an SAP. But we talk about patient care, we're taking mission critical up another notch. When we talk patient care, we're talking life and death critical. It's a whole nother level of support for our customers and for the software. So before we start, we're going to have a little palate cleanser here, another polling question. I'll read it for you again in case some of us are joining from mobile devices. Question is, which of the following is not a main benefit of electronic health records, EHR? That's the class of software we're talking about in this section. Which of these is not a feature of a patient care app? Faster, more accurate access to patient records, improved access to care, more secure patient data, and better diagnostics. Give you a couple of seconds to weigh in on those questions. Good. So I purposely set this up to trick you a little bit, and it appears I did trick most of the audience. More secure patient data is very important. It's critical, but it is not the main domain of the patient care software. However, it is something that every admin, every decision maker, every executive in a healthcare institution needs to worry about. And the reason I put that up there is to draw attention to it, because sad to say, in the world we live in today, the number one target for ransomware attacks, for malware attacks, for bad actors is healthcare institutions. And that's because it is a life and death environment, and they know you'll pay the ransom. And I wanted to put that in there because part of FlashStack, and we're going to talk about that, is a superior security environment. And that's really important when you're supporting a healthcare environment. So with that, I'm going to bring Kevin on. Kevin is our account executive with perhaps one of the most used applications in the world now. Just like SAP, it is a giant in its space. It is a patient care hosting application. Most of this patient care is a hosted environment. And Kevin manages our relationship with that vendor. So Kevin, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Well, we heard Nihal talk about some of the critical issues around SAP, and I heard honestly, some similar themes that I think affect your client. You know, the ability to scale, automation is important, orchestration. You want to talk about some of the challenges in the healthcare hosting environment that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, given the demands as well as the rapid growth inside of the healthcare industry, managing a multi-tenant environment with very specific SLAs based on survivability and rapid patient care, the ability to scale becomes a critical hurdle and challenge. Through the utilization of FlashStack, some of the nice feature sets are the ability to use out-of-the-box templates, the ability to push those templates to all the profiles and make it reproducible across those profiles. Again, in a multi-tenant environment, especially that's scaling rapidly, orchestration becomes a hurdle, especially with given the constraints on everyone's resources and time. So the ability to use scripts and to easily hand off those between the teams allows the team to do more with less resources. So this whole concept of deploy at scale to rapidly meet the demands of the growth of not only the industry, but of the individual institutions has really become critical inside of the success that we've had with FlashStack.
Well, it's fascinating because in this case, most of this application, which is a popular application in the healthcare patient care space. Most of this is a hosted environment, and we're talking about the vendor that hosts it. And I like to say that for most customers, IT is not your line of business. Your line of business is your retailer, your financial institution, and IT is a means to an end. But when you're a hoster, IT not only is patient care your business now, but IT becomes your business as well. So these folks have two worries around risk and around performance. And one of the things they have to worry about is they have to divvy up their capacity to support their customers. They've got hospitals all over. They assign them to pods, I guess, in their data center. And what has FlashStack meant to their ability to onboard customers and to get greater efficiency out of these pods?
Yeah, so the FlashStack design, also called pods, allows them to onboard customers with less time required, so faster, as well as that growth continues to occur inside of existing clientele, allows them to meet that growth on demand. In order to be to respond to that growth, the ability to move compute and storage on demand has been the biggest piece. A lot of that is due to the ability to move and scale with minimal networking requirements, really reducing that cabling, and it makes it easier for data center teams to deploy.
Well, you mentioned, I was going to say, you mentioned a couple of green issues there as well, which I know was important to the client, important to all our clients now.
Yeah. And I think, the other thing that I think has become very imperative is, in today's environment, whether it's due to the financial impact or the ESG green impact, is there's limited data center or colo space available.
Oh, yes.
And so, the justification has to be, how do we maximize that space, not only for dollars and cents, but for things such as power and cooling. And density has really become a major TCO ROI impact of FlashStack. It allows for the consolidation of racks. It allows for the reduction of RUs. And then again, not to be repetitive, but that reduction in cabling. For example, if 168 floor tiles were used for legacy storage, we're doing the same workload in 7 floor tiles.
That's
so we're averaging.
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time for our audience.
So on average, if 168 floor tiles were used for legacy storage, we're accomplishing the same capacity with greater performance inside of 7 floor tiles.
Yeah, that's money savings right to the bottom line right there. That's impressive. Yeah.
So on a total effective basis, we're averaging about 49 petabytes in 7 racks.
Wow. Now, we talk about data reduction in SAP environment, and I see a stat here that blows me away about the compression that they're seeing with their new FlashStack environment. Is that true? Almost 8 to 1?
Correct.
Wow.
Inside of FlashStack, along with our partnership with VMware, virtualized workloads, inclusive of SQL, allows very good data reduction, which also accelerates our ability to do more in less floor space.
And I was being perhaps a little dramatic at the beginning. We talked about life and death versus enterprise mission critical, another level up the scale of importance. And you say that they've not had any downtime in 4 years with a FlashStack environment.
Correct. We're going on almost 8 years with zero downtime. And a lot of what has led to that is whether we do software upgrades or we do hardware upgrades to meet the demands we talked about earlier, that whole process is non-disruptive. And so that non-disruptive process allows and supports that zero downtime.
That's amazing. And so, this is the main hoster for healthcare applications. And interestingly enough, I'm hearing some of the same rationalization I know from working with one of the main hosters for SAP applications: data reduction, scalability on demand, reduced downtime. And almost, does this make sense? A level of predictability. And that means reduce risk when you have increased predictability. And I think we're seeing that here. This is really an exciting story, and I know I feel better knowing our healthcare institutions are in the hands of FlashStack. So thank you very much, Kevin, for the great work there. Sorry about the mouse. We're going to switch gears a little bit because we've talked about two of the largest, I guess you'd say, production applications in the world. But now we're going to talk about what's becoming one of the largest databases around, that MySQL, which truly has surprised me. When I was coming up, there was Oracle, there was Microsoft SQL Server, and there was DB2. And you had those big three choices. And now there's a whole class of open databases that has emerged, very popular with FlashStack. MySQL is the leader. So we're going to come back to Nihal, talk a little about the demands and requirements of an open database environment, specifically MySQL. But before we go, we've got a little bit of this is more of a trivia question than a polling question. I'll read it for you. So these open databases were invented in Sweden. So this is true. How did these Swedish invented MySQL and MariaDB databases get their names? So to give you a little history, they invented in Switzerland, acquired by Sun, and then Sun was acquired by Oracle. So they have had travels around the industry in terms of ownership. And that's where this question stems from. So the selections are: Larry Ellison renamed these databases after Oracle acquired Sun. Not surprising by Larry. Former Sun CEO Jonathan Schwartz named them after his favorite Brooks and Dunn song, My Maria. They were named after the inventor's daughter, My, and Maria, his daughters. Or the Swedish National Data Center held a contest to name them. God, I love this audience because my favorite answer is leading. I really don't know if Jonathan Schwartz was a big Dunn and Brooks fan, but gosh, I hope he would named it after My Maria. Actually, the answer is C. They were named after two of the inventor's daughters, My and Maria. And in fact, when Sun purchased MySQL, he was actually so worried about the over corporatization of the open database that then he was spurned to develop MariaDB as yet another option. So a little trivia. So thank you very much for indulging me. I love B. So Nihal, you work with these open databases, and it has been, gosh, almost a tsunami in the past couple of years of their significance. Take us through how that marketplace has developed and how big MySQL has really come in terms of database, in terms of workloads in data centers.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. But first off, kudos for that trivia question. I'm making a mental note to go to Spotify right after this webinar and listen to My Maria. Usually I listen to heavy metal, but I would love to listen to this song. But as you described, MySQL has come a long way. It's not a new database. It's been around for a while. But what has happened consistently is the evolution of the MySQL database. It started off as a database preferred by developers for some of their development niche projects, and now it's kind of been widely adopted in mission critical production environments. So we've really seen a massive growth, and in fact, analysts are predicting MySQL and other open source databases to grow even more in the upcoming years. And there's certainly the free community edition, which is true to the spirit of open source, the origins. And then there's the commercial product, as you described early on. It's now part of Oracle. So there's the MySQL Enterprise Edition. Largely, the difference is on how support is provided. And more recently, there's also MySQL HeatWave, which is the database service that's available on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, as well as AWS and Azure. So as I said, it's really come a long way.
What's the draw? I mean, Oracle, was everywhere, and then Oracle buys them. Why does Oracle need another database? What's the draw of this MySQL?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it is well suited to some of the modern apps and the demands of modern apps in terms of scalability of data. It's also as I said, it has the roots from the developer community. They feel comfortable with it, and there's of course the open source roots or the community, right? The fact that everyone is helping each other in terms of making a better product. So all of that has contributed to kind of that acceptance over the years of MySQL.
And it's mainstream, right? It's one of the top 3
Absolutely.
databases in the industry now. It's not a niche player anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. If you so one of my favorite websites is db-engines.com. And if you go there and you can actually look at the popularity of databases. So MySQL is right up there. It's definitely the most popular open source database, but it's also, I think, one of the most widely adopted databases. So certainly it has it's gained mainstream acceptance.
Get to. So let's talk then. Given the mainstream acceptance, we're seeing this more and more show up in our data centers. A lot more of the use cases that go out with FlashStack are MySQL database use cases. So talk a little bit for us about some of the challenges, especially this term we're hearing more about, data industry. So
yeah, I think when we have these conversations, Brian, with FlashStack customers that have adopted MySQL, a common recurring theme is, well, we've got massive data now. We've got volumes and volumes of data. We have this issue with data gravity and being able to kind of operationalize the data, trying to get away from the challenges of silos, getting away from the challenges of the sprawl that is happening, right? And so there is data gravity is kind of a recurring theme, not just for MySQL databases, but kind of it applies also for any of the other databases. It's sort of this expanding volumes of data that's leading into data management issues. And then the other aspect to it is around performance. You don't want the storage to be the bottleneck to performance, but we hear it all the time when they're using, for example, direct attached storage because they've used that in the past for when they had a development niche project and they were using direct attached storage for their MySQL environment. It was good enough when it was a niche project, but it doesn't really help when you're trying to go with a production environment, right? So performance is key. And then there's unique aspects of MySQL where it's important to have a storage platform that can kind of scale, or a data storage platform that can scale as the database grows. So I'll give you an example. MySQL has the concept of seeding replicas. So replicas are essentially a way for growing the database. And so you want to be able to move or make copies of the existing database to be able to seed the new replica. And often at times, obviously MySQL has the native capabilities of doing this, but over time, it takes time to do that. And you might have network connectivity issues. So these are the kind of things that certainly impact performance. Data protection is key. We've touched upon ransomware and all the issues that can come with any kind of loss of data from ransomware attacks or even any kind of disasters, right? So business continuity and being able to protect MySQL data, that's something that our database administrators and our technical practitioners are dealing with. And then the last piece, which we've also touched upon when it came to the SAP environment, also applies true for MySQL environments, is having that consistent data plane, whether you're in cloud or have a on-prem version, being able to kind of accelerate and simplify, that's super critical.
Thank you. That's fascinating. And like I said, as an old dude, the emergence of MySQL has, even though it's been around for a while, the emergence into mainstream compute has really surprised me. But we see it. We see it completely. And as I said, it's now one of the main data loads for FlashStack. And we have a number of things that I think we do pretty well around these open databases, and specifically for MySQL, right, Nihal?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important aspect is performance, right? At the end of the day, nobody likes the slow applications. And if you look at where MySQL is used, it's especially for web services. That's been kind of the origins of MySQL. Nobody likes a slow web application. Nobody likes any kind of slow application because it ultimately impacts the user experience. And so you have to look at the infrastructure that's supporting the application. And obviously, you don't want your storage to be the bottleneck there. So that's something that FlashStack does really well, eliminating some of the bottlenecks and also being able to consolidate on fewer arrays. We've talked about the data reduction capability. We've talked about some of the other pieces of our technology that make it easier to consolidate on fewer storage arrays. That's super critical. Along with the data footprint efficiency. I really liked Kevin's example when he was talking about less number of floor tiles. That just kind of goes to show how we're kind of meeting that efficiency requirement, and also from a green data center requirement, right? I touched a little bit about the fact that MySQL needs to be able to seed new replicas. We, similar to the snapshotting technology that works in the SAP HANA environment, we have the capabilities to kind of reduce the time to availability for these new MySQL replicas using snapshotting. And we have actually technical guides on how to do it. So I'd encourage the audience to look at some of the snapshotting technical guides that we have. Service disruptions and being able to eliminate that is super critical, again, in a MySQL environment. So with the 6 nines availability, wow, and the fact that we can meet that is critical. We've touched upon hybrid cloud deployment and the fact that you can kind of get the same data services and APIs, right? Whether you have a MySQL and deployment on-prem or in the cloud, and being able to kind of move data across, right, which is super critical, is something that FlashStack does really, really well. And last but not the least, I want to talk about this whole move to containerization of the applications, which we have seen, especially with the digital transformation initiatives, right? And with the Portworx, our solution for Kubernetes environments, along with FlashStack, we're kind of extending the same kind of capabilities to give a consistent data management for DB containers, right? Whether it's high availability, whether it's data mobility for movement of data, whether it's protecting the data in automation, right? All of that, something that we do really well.
Nihal, I have to throw in a shameless plug here for FlashStack, because there are several variants of Cisco UCS compute-based stacks that customers can acquire, but only FlashStack, because it comes from Pure, works pretty seamlessly with Portworx container environments. I like to say we were the one storage partner with the foresight to acquire a container management company, and one of the best ones at that, Portworx. And I was seeing an increased volume of deals going through where people are hosting things in there. Hosting may be the wrong word. Managing applications in these container environments. And FlashStack can still see that, can still manage that from its intersite environment. And we've got a CVD on Portworx integration with FlashStack, but it's really important for customers to know about.
Yep. Well said, Brian. And
plug, as you said.
Indeed. So I just wanted to, I think the audience might be wondering, like, okay, well, Nihal and Brian, that's great, but let's talk about proof points, right? How are customers that have MySQL, how are they using it today? So I want to leave the audience here with one example. We have a leading travel service provider in Latin America that's actually has a MySQL environment. Similar situation like Southwest Gas, where they had aging IT infrastructure, a legacy storage that was not really doing the job with, increasing latencies. As I mentioned, MySQL you want to use for modern apps, and it was really not doing the job, and ultimately it was impacting the development team. It was impacting the business growth. And so with their move to Pure, they've been able to kind of reduce the time it takes to actually give the best features and services. The data reduction capability that we've talked about previously also applies here, lowering of the latencies. And most importantly, it's made the business very competitive, right? Being when you can give your development teams the tools to succeed and be able to reduce the time to develop new features, that ultimately improves your competitiveness. And that's essentially what we've been able to do for this customer.
It's fascinating because in our marketing literature, we always talk about how scalability and extreme scalability on demand can support your business goals and your business growth. But here you've got a very tangible example of that from the real world, where the service provider, the travel service provider, you say, has supported 600% growth in their dev team over 4 years. So that's extreme scalability. So this is really exciting, and it's nice to see some new names in the workload world. And it's interesting to see the patterns emerge on how FlashStack has supported all these three very different, but in a way very similar environments, with availability improvements, with performance improvements, with scalability, which is really what you're looking for an infrastructure to run mission critical workloads on. So with that, I think we have some Q&A. We don't have much time. My bad for letting us go a little bit longer than I had thought we would. So maybe we have time for just a couple of questions. Monisha, do you want to read? I know a couple have come in, 2 or 3
Yes.
at least I've seen.
The first question we have here is, the speakers talked a lot about data reduction. How do you measure it, and how do you know how much reduction your clients already achieved?
Thank you very much. Well, I alluded to it before, but what was a surprise to me when I joined Pure, and I'll let Nihal weigh in on this as well, is this data reduction is not a made-up figure. These are factual data points reported back from our customers' live environments to Pure through our management software, through Pure One. Did I accurately portray that, Nihal?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian, because we have the capabilities of actually managing and looking at the metrics, right? So these are not made up numbers, and something that our customers are also reporting back to us, because they're seeing the benefits that come from data reduction.
Thank you.
The next question we have is, how does FlashStack provision additional capacity for these various workloads?
Well, I don't want to hog the questions, but let me take this one because it's around Intersight. I think well, in many ways we do it, but one of the coolest things we have in the new FlashStack is a management solution called Intersight from Cisco. And Intersight really blurs the world of CI and HCI because it is a cloud native AI-based management tool. So it can provision and scale your compute, your network, or your storage layer independently of the other layers. And at the same time, because it is AI-based, it can learn your usage, your capacity needs, and start to take that maintenance load off your IT team and start automating that scalability and that capacity on demand as you need it. It's really an exciting management tool. We don't have time to go into it today, but I encourage you to take a look at it on our website, www.flashstack.com.
The next question we have is, my company recently started S4 transformation project, which has led to assessing our data infrastructure needs and thinking about HANA data tiering. What advice would you give to SAP administrators like me?
Yeah, that's a great question. And sorry, Brian. So that's a great question, and I can take that one. So first off, I would recommend that you involve the data infrastructure team right up front. Infrastructure is should not be just thought about as something that you turn on or just as a commodity. It has to provide value, right? So I would recommend that you get together with the infrastructure team right off the bat as you start the journey to move to S4. And the other part of the question was around data tiering, and we alluded to it earlier in the presentation. HANA has the native storage tiering capability that we call native storage extension. It allows the capability to store less frequently accessed data into the storage system. And so certainly we support the data tiering. We have actually technical guides. If you go to purestorage.com/SAP, easy link to remember, you will get more details on how to implement data tiering.
Yeah, we have a unique advantage there, I think, as well, in that because of the performance we provide and some of the tricks we can do, the return path from that data back into memory when you want to use it minimizes the latency of that of accessing that data, because that's always the concern. Okay, let me put it in a warm data tier because I don't use it all the time, but then how long does it take when I do need to use it? And
that's a great point, Brian, because yeah, absolutely. In terms of the actual performance, what we've one of the things that we do really well is kind of give you near to the performance of in memory, right? Because HANA is an in-memory database, and we want to be able to, from a storage tier, be able to kind of reduce your cost of operation, but also try to give you that close to near in-memory performance, and that's something that we do really well.
Well, I know we've gone long here, and I want to thank my guest, Kevin and Nihal. Thank you, everybody.
All right, and thanks, Brian, for acting as the MC there. That was a really informative presentation, and for all the insights in the Q&A there. So we really appreciate your time today. And before we wrap up, we have one more piece of business. It's the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of that gift card, the $250 Amazon gift card, is Max Jays from Illinois. So congratulations to Max Jays. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Pure Storage for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.